All right. I don't want to make this a military channel. That's why I don't talk about it very often. But I was in the military, and a guy like Dan Crenshaw, like I had hope for becoming a politician because he was in the Navy and he was a Navy SEAL, and he checks all those boxes. And lately, or over the last few years, he has been nothing more than a politician. And just recently, I haven't really looked into his background, but he came out and made some comments about the fiasco going on with the Speaker of the House, with McCarthy being kicked out, and then Scalise removing his name for nomination, and then Jordan having his name put up, and um, Dan Crenshaw came out very frustrated, visibly so, talking about that like Jim Jordan wasn't going to be able to get the votes, and he's just frustrated because uh, why can't the Republicans just get along to get along and keep doing business as usual? The same things that they did to get us to the point where we're at as a country now, because they're not functioning as any type of opposition party, nor are they actually being conservative. Now, I'm not a conservative. If I had to label myself anything, it would be a moderate or a libertarian. So I think both parties are, how to be polite, not very good. But in the case of Dan Crenshaw, and this is why I want to bring him up, is when I actually looked into his background, it made a lot of things very clear. So he grew up abroad. His father was a petroleum engineer, and he graduated from high school in Bogota, Colombia. And then he eventually went to college in the United States and graduated, and he actually worked for Representative Pete Sessions. So this is all like earmarking him for further future political office. And eventually joined the Navy as an officer, got the opportunity to go to SEAL training, passed that, and became a special warfare officer. Now, he did get himself injured while during one of his combat deployments, and lost one of his eyes. So I mean, I could sit there and go, hey, this guy is kind of a badass. I'm not going to talk anything about that. But what interests me is I thought he was an enlisted Navy SEAL, and he wasn't. He was an officer. So now when I listen to him talk, he doesn't view the world like enlisted. I joined enlisted. I graduated from college, and then I joined enlisted. And the reason why I was enlisted, I went enlisted, is because I wanted to do the job. I didn't want to do the paperwork. I wanted to actually understand what I was doing. I wanted to get my hands dirty. That's kind of how I was raised. And the idea of being a paper pusher officer was not something that I was interested in. And the funny thing is, while I was in the military, all the good officers that I ever worked with were already plotting their way out of the military within 6 months of getting out of officer candidate school, because they had already found what the military actually was not what they had signed up for. The job of being an officer in the military was about pleasing your commanding officer to such a degree that he would give you good marks on your promotions, and then you can move forward. It was not actually about getting doing the job well, because that had nothing to do with getting promoted. It was about validating the guy above you by any means possible. And that's how a guy like Dan Crenshaw is going to view the world. Because I actually saw that one of the rumors swirling about about why Dan Crenshaw was upset was because he knew what's his face McCarthy, and McCarthy had earmarked him for certain appointments in the future, and he can't get those appointments if a guy like Jim Jordan becomes the Speaker of the House. So, that would be the same way I would see some of the poor officers that I had, and that's a big reason why I got out of the military. And a lot of the other people that I have ever met that were veterans got out of the military themselves, was because of how poorly it was run from the officer level down. Everybody that was competent left because it was not what they had signed up for, and everybody that was incompetent but also very good at cleaning boots stayed in. And now we have gotten to the point where, as politicians, they don't view the world from the standpoint of how do I get my hands dirty and actually understand how things work. They view the world from how do I get my next appointment? How do I get my next election? How do I win my next election? And he doesn't see this as a negative thing because this is just how he's always ran his life. His idea of what being a politician is the ability to move further along because then he can get more stuff done the further he goes along. When I was in the Army, being a sergeant meant getting something done and not really worrying about how pretty it looked, because at the end of the day, it just needed to get done. And a guy like Dan Crenshaw doesn't view it that way. He views it as, I want to look good on paper, but it doesn't actually matter if the thing that I'm supposed to do gets done. I don't really care about, excuse me, I shouldn't say Dan Crenshaw doesn't actually really care about if anything he does has any value, because he doesn't actually care, because he never actually understood what it's like to be an American, because he grew up abroad, the son of a petroleum engineer, and his idea of what being American is an idea that he came up with living someplace else. His idea of getting his hands dirty is something that he understands from watching his enlisted soldiers do their job that he told them to do. So now, as a politician, his idea of being a good politician is you being a good constituent and doing what you're supposed to do, because he knows better, because that's what he's done his entire life. So anyway, that's all I have to say today, and maybe I'll come up with something later.